Welcome to the Second Bite Podcast, where we talk with top entrepreneurs and CEOs about creating valuable companies through creative transactions. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome back to the Second Bite Podcast. We got a great episode. Jamie Birch is with me, the founder of JEBCommerce. Jamie, thank you for being here.
Yeah, Todd, thanks for having me. Excited to chat today.
Jamie, you've been in the agency world for a long time. You've got your hands in a couple different things. One of them being winemaking, which we'll save for another episode. But I want to unpack, because you have been through a transaction, and I'm hoping you'll share a bunch of that with us. Why don't we just start with an intro into you? What is JEBCommerce? And then let's start to unpack the transaction you did a little bit.
Yeah, so I started JEBCommerce, JEBCommerce. It's my initials, but everyone calls it Jeb. It always has. I started that. It'll be 20 years this October. So next month, that company's celebrating their 20 years. I'm actually working on a special wine to give them as a present for them, anniversary present. But I was working at Coldwater Creek. And I was a single dad and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and started freelancing at night, started making a lot more money freelancing, and probably like a lot of agency owners, that's kind of how they started.
And this is 2002, 2003-ish?
This is, 2003. And then just was doing enough that I was driving an hour commute. I know if you live on the East Coast, that's not a big deal. But on the West Coast, that's a huge commute. And so I just wanted to spend more time with the kids. Started the agency, and we quickly grew from there.
Did you start from the beginning being in the affiliate space?
I did. Well, my first job out of college was Search Engine Guru in '99. And they literally sat me in a very large cafeteria, gave me a card table and an e-machine and said, get us search rankings. I had two questions in the interview. How was your drive? Because I drove 3 hours to the interview. And the second one was, can you do this? And I was a cocky 24-year-old. So I was like, of course I can do this.
Yeah.
I went home to my computer science major roommate and was like, what is this? I've always been in computers, but I didn't really know what search engine marketing was. So I got there and I had interviewed for, almost everything. Door and window manufacturing. My family's in manufacturing, always has been. I went to school for finance, so I interviewed, with all the finance companies. And I was just looking at a 10-year track to get to where I wanted to go. And this internet thing was just emerging. And I was pretty sure, if I show my capabilities, I'll just get more responsibility quickly. And that's exactly what happened. So I started with search engine marketing. We did quite well there. And then they just started giving me more things. And as more things emerged, I found them and just took them. And so by the time that, when the .com bubble burst, I had been doing affiliate marketing, search engine marketing, paid search marketing came out during that time. So we were doing that. I was doing email marketing. And then I took an affiliate marketing job in Seattle. The bubble completely deflated. And I thought, I'm kind of done with these .coms. And I'd like to go to someone who sells an actual good. And I found Coldwater Creek. And there I did affiliate marketing, email marketing. I even did print ad, those campaign management. So working with Oprah's magazine and those kind of things. So really got a broad cross-section of marketing experience at Coldwater Creek. And then kind of fell into starting an agency. There was never an idea of ooh, this is what I want to do. It's more of, there's an opportunity, I'll go down that road and take it. And then once we were running on my own, it just took off. Business was really good and I had to start hiring. And so, at our peak, we were doing several $1 million a year. The agency had, I think, 25 people.
Wow.
Working in it, and clients like Cabela's and Smart Pack, Johnson & Murphy, Princess Cruises. We had a really solid client list.
And then, you're looking back on it. Were you at all qualified to be running the lives of 25 other people and managing clients like that?
The way you asked that question, you already know the answer. No, I wasn't qualified at all. Like I think the thing that set me up for success was my family was always business minded. My dad was in manufacturing, and really he was in leadership. I'd always been in leadership. So, around the dinner table, that's what we talked about. We talked about his work. We talked about our work. We talked, I always had a good resume. We just talked about career, leadership, business all the time. So that set me on a good path. But to be honest, as most young men, when they're starting out, you kind of push against, your dad. And
Right.
So he doesn't know anything. And I got this figured out. And I had a mentor give me a book called The E-Myth. And this is really when we went from
By Michael
a freelancer. Gerber. Yeah. We went from like a freelancer with some people helping to a business. And so I read that in a weekend. My family was camping. I read it again that weekend. And I read it a third time that weekend and took notes. Came back, told the company, you guys need to figure out how to do this week. I'm writing how we do our business. So I wrote our processes. And then I met my dad for dinner, and I handed him this playbook. And it was a
3-ring binder,
bound not 3-ring, but I actually had it printed at Kinko's, spiral bound cover, everything. And I handed it to him, and I was like, damn it, you were right. Like this is the same as making sausage. It's the same as everything else. It's we had to find our way, and then we had to document that way, because we couldn't optimize our way until we had a way.
And what happened to the business after you did that?
Well, every time we made a turn, 20% of the people didn't want to go there. So I lost staff almost immediately.
So pause there for a sec. What did that feel like at the time? Did it make you question your decisions?
I felt it was a disaster, and early on, the way I ran business and the way I led was these were my family. I took 100% responsibility for their careers and really internalized their participation in their work and the company. And so it hurt. And yeah, it was scary. It's like, maybe we're doing the wrong thing. So that was one thing that happened. And the other thing, the people who stayed were in, like they understood, they were in, and they were relieved. Because the way, if you don't have a process, especially as a service agency,
you're winging it.
And a thing comes up and you go, hey guys, how do we handle this? And you spend so much time figuring out how do you handle it. And then it's handled and you moved on. And every time they need you, every time the owner has to be involved. So we did this thing 6 times this year, but now it's everyone. We're grabbing 7 man hours to do this. It needs me. And then people started making decisions on their own. Client performance went up, and we really started to build our name for ourselves. And I remember my mentor told me, he goes, look, you're winning. You're hitting the end zone, but it's not Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. It's Brett Favre, and it's exciting. But a lot of times, like, I don't know what you're doing and you're giving me ulcers. You're gunslinging it, and that's great, but you need to move methodically down the field. And that's what your clients are going to need. He was a great mentor.
What was his name?
Steve Simonson.
Shout out to him.
Yeah. And he was where I wanted to be. He was running like 17 companies. And he was just enigmatic. And, he was a client. He didn't have to say anything to me. So he was a client of me when I was freelancing. And then when I started the agency, gave me the book, said, you need to read this. And it's really going to change how you do things. And it did. And then we grew. Once our clients, like, I think what people don't understand from the client side is there's a lot of anxiety with working with an agency. What are they doing? Well, we meet with them next week. Well, what are they doing all week? What if something happens? Are they executing the plan that I have? And that's a weight that the person who hired you is saddled with. And so part of our processes were alleviating that. And they knew this is what we did on Monday. This is what we did on Wednesday. And here's how we function. And that really changed. It changed the relationships we had with clients. And it opened us up to, we had we landed a very large client, and we actually didn't win the contract at first. So someone else won the contract. They were announced that they won. And when they got to now fulfillment, now they're negotiating the actual SOP. They didn't have some of the processes that we had and lost the contract after they had won it. Like they had won it. We were notified that we didn't. And that company came back to us and said, how do you do this? And I sent them my manual. This is how we do it.
Yeah.
And they were like, good, let's get started. And it had a 7-8 year relationship with that client.
And so let's fast forward now. So the business is growing, and then a transaction comes about, right? So now we're in the 2020s. So tell me a little bit about how did the transaction come about? Did they knock on your door? Did you go progressively into the market and say, let's do a deal?
Over the years, I'd been approached a number of times about being acquired. And every time I walked away, and it wasn't about the price. It wasn't that I didn't get the multiple I wanted. It was that it's so hard for an agency, a marketing agency, whose initials are the founder, the name of the initials of the founders. It's really hard to get a deal that you're not getting a job.
Right.
And I had started another business 8 years ago that is, a number of times larger than this agency. But
not an agency, correct?
Yes, not a marketing agency, not even in it's in healthcare field. And it had been doing quite well. So I didn't want I didn't want a job, I didn't want, and what I'd seen my peers in this space get it, and no judgment on them. They were acquired by a company and they stayed on for quite a number of years. And it wasn't something I wanted. So we got to a point where that other business, I just, it was doing so well and took very little of my time. The team does such a phenomenal job. And I had started to get into other things. I've been showing horses for a number of years. My kids are into that too, so we're traveling. And so I was looking for a bit more flexibility, and I had a really good team. So we actually sold to our employees, and they approached me and they said, what do you want to do? You're like, really, what do you want to do? Mm-hmm. And I said, I think after 19 years, this is a pretty good run. And my nature is to start something, optimize that thing, set it up to succeed, and then move on. So 19 years in one business is astronomical compared to what my nature is. So we did a really good job, and frankly, they were a better team to take the company forward than I was.
Now, so a couple questions. First, so people are familiar with an ESOP, employee stock ownership plan. Was it a formal ESOP which is typically the owner goes out and borrows money and the employees pay it back? Or how did you set up the structure of the deal?
So they came to me and said, we'd like to buy it. We want to run this, and we'd like to watch you show horses and make wine and go do your thing. And so it was very much like another entity bought it. It wasn't an ESOP. They made an offer. We went back and forth. And essentially, they basically took a loan from me and they pay me out. So it's not like an earn out, but
it's like you're holding the note on the transaction.
I'm holding the note on the transaction. Was really comfortable with that because they do a phenomenal job. And frankly, they were running it for maybe a year before any of that happened.
Yeah.
I have been blessed with some pretty amazing talent over the years, and especially this group that took over. So that was the structure of it. And it's been going really well. We're 8-9 months since the transaction closed. They're doing a great job and growing, and it's been a good thing for everybody.
So there wasn't a big lump sum up front.
No.
So it's just, and it feels a little bit like the pressure of getting something out of Jeb dissipated some because of your other business.
Yeah, I was more interested in it continuing. And it's probably, if you said, what are some mistakes you made in running an agency? And I said, probably, the first 7 years of using it as another checking account. And a lot of entrepreneurs do this, right?
Right.
And then I hired a really good CFO, got a coach, and we really buckled down. So we didn't have to have anything. It really was, there was a lot of freedom in that transaction because it wasn't like we got to get this. So I didn't have to sell to anybody. They could have kept running it. So there was a lot of freedom, no pressure on what the deal was. I wanted it to be good for them so that the business continues to run and grow. You've built something for 19 years. You definitely want to see it be successful. And the people there are fantastic. So there was not a lot of pressure to get the deal done, to get a certain amount, because we had been very good with our money the last 10 years. And we invested in another organization that was the bulk of, my family's revenue. Yeah.
And so when you do a deal like that, how long is the payout period typically for? Because the longer, the better for the buyer.
Yep.
Better for the buyer also if you're the seller and you don't need a big chunk of cash. Better for the seller to know that it's always going to keep coming in, right? Because these guys can make those payments work. Do you get payments monthly?
They did. They did do a bulk payment after 6 months, which was kind of nice. But it comes in monthly. We went through a title company, and we did the transaction itself. Once you can be real good friends with someone, and you start to talk about this, and it gets weird quick.
Yeah.
And what we were able to do is talk about the weirdness. And just be able to be real up front. And so we tried to do all our paper on our own. And then the plan was, let's figure out how we're going to do this and then go to an attorney. Let's save some money. Let's not spend 50 grand getting this deal done. And that was a mistake because we're not attorneys.
Yeah.
And we don't even know, like I did marketing. I was in leadership. That's what I'm really good at. I'm not good at contracts. And so eventually we got to a point and we thought we had something great, the paper that was amenable to everybody, and outlined it. And I took it to my attorney and he's like, why, who did this? And I'm like, I wrote it. He goes, how did you write it? I said, well, a little ChatGPT, a little Google, and then there's some paragraphs that I wrote. And he's like, this is horrible. And we'll get both of you. This isn't good for either of you. I'm not looking at this. I'm throwing this away. And let's start over. And when he started over, it was so simple. It was just so simple. It was, there's a note, I'm carrying it, they pay this amount, and it's done. And there's 3 new owners, so I had 3 agreements. And then we were just kind of negotiating, when you're running a business for 19 years, sometimes personal things and assets kind of get a little entangled. So we just had to kind of parse out some domains and some properties, negotiated that, put in an agreement. And honestly, once we got the attorney involved, it was very, very quick.
What was the stickiest part of the negotiation?
I think the top line at the end of the day, price and the interest rate on the loan. But honestly, once we got the attorney, it was so easy with the group that we had, and 2 of the owners I had worked with at Coldwater Creek. We've known each other for our entire careers.
Yeah.
She was my executive assistant. He is one of my closest friends. The other owner hired him, 3-4 years ago, and we became very tight. So what was great is we talked about all the sticky things together in the open, and address those things. And so really it was, the attorney told us, look, usually your payout's 3 years. He said, I'm not comfortable carrying this out after that, because then you're kind of relying on a cash flow you have nothing to do with. You didn't set up and you don't really know. And I'm not comfortable with your, 19 years of hard work hanging out there that long.
Yeah.
And so, but that was really amenable. Honestly, it was so.
So it went from 3 years to 2 years?
No, it went from 5 years to 3 years.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. So stayed at 3 years, and
Which increases the payment and increases the pressure on the business, right?
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. But there is also, I remember one of my first interviews out of college was for Merrill Lynch. I think it was Merrill Lynch. And the guy said, the first day you're hired, and he goes, I like you, I'll hire you. We're going to walk over to the BMW dealership. I'm going to get you a BMW. And I'm like, I don't want a BMW. He goes, you need that payment to sell these policies.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I totally get that. I'm out. I don't want that. But so a little pressure, I think, is okay. But they also they didn't want to be tied for 5 years. They wanted to bust their ass, get it done, and move on. So that seemed to work for both of us. And it coincided with all my kids. So it's really perfect.
Where did and you said they made a lump payment. Where did that come from?
It seemed to work for them to open up some.
So it wasn't required. They just wanted to do it.
No, they wanted to do it so they could run another 6 months and not have that cost associated with it. And they're looking to do some expansion. So I think they wanted to have that revenue each month.
And for you as so it's 20 years almost, you've got your name on the door and now you don't. What's that like? What's the biggest adjustment there?
It's weird watching LinkedIn. Like everyone's at a conference right now that I have spoken at and been to for 20 years. So it's a little weird seeing everyone continue. But honestly, I was so comfortable walking away, and the other things, like, we've been super busy, really busy. So it was. I left it in really good hands, so I was super comfortable. There's a little bit of like, oh, well, I don't have control over that anymore. There's whether that agency was doing really well or not doing really well, and every agency goes through those periods. You still have a big control over that revenue stream. Hey, we need another 10 grand a month. Okay, well, I know what to do. So there was a little adjustment of like, I don't have any impact on that. And frankly, it could explode, and deals have exploded, and I don't get that. So there was a bit of anxiety of dealing with like, that's not under my control anymore. And, I think men deal with this more than women. Your identity is wrapped up in that company and that work. And while the other company is bigger, 36 hours every week was to here, and 4 was at the other one. So and my initials, the name is my initials. So it was a bit like, who am I now? What do I do now? But we had been doing so many other things that it just wasn't that much of a transition. It was the right time. It's a better team to kind of manage them going forward. And so it wasn't too difficult. I didn't, sell the business and retire and sit at home, annoy my wife all day,
right.
with nothing to do. We have a ton of horses. I put my time in there. I started making wine, and I did start another business. It took me like 4 days with some headspace, and not have to worry about the stress of payroll and client needs and those kind of things. It took me like 4 days to come up with another idea that we rolled out.
And so what was your non-compete like with them?
Yeah, so I can't do anything on the agency side. I can't manage an affiliate program for 5 years. I can't consult for another agency. So pretty much, I can be on the other side of the affiliate game. I can be an affiliate, but I can't a publisher. I can't manage programs. So if a former client came to me or someone else and said, hey, we want you to help, I can't do that for 5 years. I have to send them over to JEB. Got it.
Is there any fee or commission or anything like that if you send it over?
No, we didn't negotiate that. I wasn't really worried about it.
Yeah.
I mean, I want them to be successful, and I have other things going on, so it wasn't really a focus. I'm sure if I'm also not very engaged in that community from that perspective anymore.
Right.
I served my time. I did what I needed to do. And so I'm not out there like a lot of my contemporaries when they sold or transitioned out of running the company. They stayed there as a thought leader, very active in content creation and those kind of things. And that's not what I'm doing. So there's not a whole lot of opportunity for that kind of, action to happen.
Yeah, got it. So as we wrap up here, looking back, if there was something that you could have done differently or shaped something differently, what would that be? Number one. And number two, I guess it would be less sticky if you just sold it to another group that you didn't know and didn't care about so much and the rest. Do you ever think about that from the other knocks on the door you had in the past?
No, I would think it's more sticky selling to someone else because it's so hard to sell and not have to hit growth goals. A lot of my contemporaries, they had to hit growth goals. And I think I saw 5 people in this space sell, and one of them was happy. And then I'm very happy. And the other ones, like out of the rest of them, I think there were 2 lawsuits and 2 of them are still working. And so I think it was less sticky, doing this. So I don't think, and as far as the transaction, what would I have done differently or running the company? The transaction, I would have just consulted the attorney right away, I would have grabbed the buyers, met with my attorney and said, look, this is what we're going to do. And it would have, we agreed to basic price June of last year. And it took 6 months to get to paper.
Wow.
And now looking back, that doesn't sound like a long time, but when you're in it, it's a long time. So right. I was going to say,
what accounted for the majority of that time?
Just trying to write an agreement that we had no business writing. Like,
did they have a lawyer as well?
They did. Yeah. So
you got your guy, they got their guy.
Yeah. And I would say that shouldn't change because their guy found some things. And so that it was very helpful. But I would have just got the attorney involved in the beginning. In the end, we probably spent more money.
How much did you wind up spending?
Oh, I don't even know. I would say it was less than 10 grand total on my side to get it done. Wow. And it probably would have been half of that if I just went to Greg and was like, here's what I want to do. Because he'd been my attorney. That firm had been my attorney for 17 years. And they had walked me through other acquisitions. And so he would have known exactly what to do. That was probably the one thing, but honestly, I'm really happy. They're really happy. So there's not a lot I would have done differently, and again, that freedom of not needing a big lump sum at the beginning.
Yeah, is helpful.
Having to go, I didn't have to worry about what am I going to do now. I literally, we signed that paperwork on that day, on the 3rd of January. We went out and got a coffee and I went home and rode my horse. Yeah. And that was what we did. So, but I know a lot of agencies, owners, founders, they're going to have a lot more pressure on them and different pressures than we did.
Well, and that's the reason I wanted to chat with you, because your circumstance is different. I don't think anyone should expect a fully negotiated transaction. You're going to have legal fees, a multiple of 10,000. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But all transactions are different. And part of the objective on the podcast is to give people a different experience, for that. So it was great to get your insight and your experience. We don't get involved often when a founder sells to the employees.
Yeah.
So to get a little bit of a peek into that world is helpful. To do that with somebody that's been well known in the space for a long time, that's interesting as well. So Jamie Birch, it was great to have you share your thoughts with us. Your contact information, your LinkedIn is all going to be on the show notes. So anyone wants to reach out and connect with Jamie can do that there. But Jamie, thank you for being a great guest and thank you for spending time.
Awesome. Thank you, Todd. Hopefully this is helpful. And just reach out to me on LinkedIn. And if anyone has any questions, we'd love to answer.
Excellent.
Thanks for listening to the Second Bite podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.